Countdown to Alberta Election 2015 for the Olds Didsbury Three Hills Riding. The Candidates Forum for Olds is on Friday, April 24th at 7 p.m. at the Pomeroy Inns and Suites. Doors are open at 6:30. Sponsored by the Olds and District Chamber of Commerce, Mountain View Publishing, CKFM and Rock 104 Radio, and the Pomeroy Inns and Suites at Olds College.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In case you don't know who I am, my name is Myron Thompson. I'm from Sundre, and I am your moderator tonight.
O-NET IPTV.
It's a new role for me, so I'll try to behave myself. First thing I would like to do is introduce the candidates to you in alphabetical order, if I can figure out what that is. Because we had an addition to the list, I'm pretty sure he's first, so I'll introduce to you from the Alberta Party, Jim Adamchuk. That's Adamchuk, sorry. Secondly, next to Jim is Wade Berchel, Progressive Conservative. And then next we have from the Wild Rose Alliance, Nathan Cooper. And lastly, we have from the New Democratic Party, Glenn Norman. I want to welcome each and every one of you and thank you for the excellent turnout. I only hope that the turnout for the vote day is as great as it is tonight and give us an example of once in a lifetime, a tremendous amount of votes from this province. What a show that would be. And it's essential, I think, more than ever, that this begin to take hold. I want to go over the rules with you, and I'm not going to go over all of them because a lot of them don't apply. I've already gone over them with the candidates. But as far as the crowd goes, you have already been asked, if you have written questions, raise them high in the air. And we have some people that will pick them up. And we will be asking questions from the list. We will also be taking questions from the floor. If you wish to ask a question from the floor, you must go to the podium. We'll be taking a written question, then a verbal question from the floor, then a written, then a verbal, and so on. Questions are limited to 1 minute. I will be very strict on the time. 1 minute to ask the question. There will be no speeches other than what you hear in the beginning. The second rule is there will be 1 minute to respond to the question. And at my determination, in most cases, every candidate will have an opportunity to respond to most questions, unless I feel that that is not what it should be. So I'm going to be strict to these rules. We're going to try to get through this in an ample amount of time so the candidates can stay behind for a little while and entertain you individually with whatever visitations you may wish to have. So let's make it a good evening. Let's respect each other and respect the crowd and respect your candidates with what they have to say. Let's listen carefully and respond accordingly. So welcome once again. Have a good evening. And your speaker number one from the Alberta Party, Jim Adams.
Now, Myron, do we speak from here with the mic in our hand?
That's fine. If you'd rather be up here, come ahead.
I think I'd rather.
Come on up. Choice is yours.
First of all, I'd like to thank the other candidates as well as the Olds Chamber of Commerce and sponsors for hosting this event. But I especially would like to thank the voters in attendance, because even though many of us are upset and frustrated by the President's decision to call a multi-million-dollar election a year early, despite their own law, it's even worse that he had the absolute gall to do it during the playoffs. My name is Jim Adamchuk, and I've lived in Didsbury for 25 years, and I'm running to be your MLA. I believe that the Alberta Party represents a true alternative for those of us who feel betrayed by our politicians and leaders. What the Alberta Party values is the following: keeping more money in the pockets of the working class. As such, we would introduce a progressive tax system that lowers taxes on those that make less than $50,000 a year. The Alberta Party values a working healthcare system that focuses on preventive health and directing resources to frontline workers. We value funding education so that we can build schools and educating our leaders for tomorrow. We believe in predictable funding for municipalities to build the infrastructure they need to grow. We will repeal the Alberta Land Stewardship Act in order to recognize the legitimate right of landowners to steward their own land. Finally, we believe that an MLA should represent the constituents of the riding, not the party platform. As your elected representative, I have the voice and the mandate to speak for you, not toe the party line. There's an Alberta story from the 20s or 30s. Edward VIII came to visit his land, his ranch, the Yahatinda Ranch, just west of Sundre. He was given a tour by a cowboy, and after spending the day together on horseback, they stopped for a rest, and the would-be king said to the cowboy, "Who is your master?" And the cowboy said, without batting an eye, "He ain't been born yet." The cowboy was strong and free. He was an Albertan. So Albertans, here we are almost 100 years later. And this Alberta candidate needs to know, who do you follow? Who inspires you? Do you have a master? The Wild Rose is proposing that we privatize healthcare and send people out of the province for care. How have the policies of privatization and deregulation and the wonderful trickle-down economy worked for you? Utility rates are higher and there's less money in your pockets. Instead of funding services, it's going to profits. The PCs refuse to ask corporations to pay their share. Their master seems clear to me. This mess we're in, they made it. 44 years in power, and they want us to give them another mandate? How gullible do they think we are? The cowboy hero of our story, he would be repulsed by those currently in power. The Alberta cowboy believes in democratic renewal, a government that cares about people, that encourages small businesses and entrepreneurship, that funds public health care and funds public education. We need a new government, one led by the Alberta Party. Even if we don't form the next government, the Alberta Party will represent your values in the legislature. The cowboy from that story would not sell Alberta. He wouldn't sell off our children's future, or health care, or equality of living. He would take a stand against such arrogance. The Alberta cowboy would value and safeguard our elderly citizens and our children's education first. He wouldn't make his cuts then. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Our second speaker for the evening, Nathan Cooper from the Wild Rose Party.
Well, good evening. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you this evening. And before I really get going, I just wanted to start by saying thank you so much for being here tonight. You know, there's a lot of very important things that take place on a Friday night, and for you to take time out of your schedule to join us, I am really humbled that you're here. It's great to have you. Also want to briefly thank Mr. Thompson, the Chamber, and all of the sponsors for putting this event on. You are an important part of the democratic process. I'm running to be the MLA of Olds Didsbury Three Hills because of my desire and commitment to put constituents first. Over the next 2 hours, we're going to have a lot of time to talk about the Wild Rose Plan, a good plan, a solid plan that stands up for Albertans, that seeks to provide balanced budgets without raising taxes on hardworking families. But with that being said, we're going to have lots of time to talk about that. So I hope that you'll just give me a couple of moments to introduce myself to you. My wife, Tanya, and I live in Carstairs with our 3 children, Porter, Peyton, and Paxton. She affectionately refers to them as the 3 peas in our pod. I grew up in a large family with 2 brothers and 2 sisters where public service was extremely important to our family. I learned from a very, very young age the importance of that service and the importance of serving others and putting others first. That's one of the reasons why in 2010 I ran for council in Carstairs, and I've been proud to serve them ever since. I see my role, or my potential role as an MLA, much like that, a service to others. Let me be clear though, this election isn't about me. It's not about the polls, it's not about the leaders, it's not about the parties or the advertisements. This election is about you. And it's about how you and I together can hopefully work to make our community stronger. I seek to be an advocate for our community. I strongly believe that I can best do this as a Wild Rose member of the Assembly. The Wild Rose team allows MLAs to have free votes in the legislature and encourages MLAs to put the needs of the constituents first, not the needs of the party. I've been very fortunate in my young 35 years to play a number of significant roles in leadership in a number of different types of organizations. In the political sphere at all 3 levels of government, in the nonprofit sector, I was the executive director of a foundation in Canmore, and in the business world, I managed an ecotourism project with my wife in Australia. Closer to home, it's been an absolute honor to fulfill a number of roles for the town of Carstairs, both regionally and locally. I served regionally as a board member of the Central Alberta Economic Partnership and the Parkland Regional Library Board. Recently, I was the Chief of Staff to the Wild Rose Opposition in Edmonton. This role provided me with a real opportunity to get a sense of what makes Edmonton work. Things around the legislative process, how relationships are built in Edmonton, and I believe that it'll allow me to hit the ground running should I be honored to be your MLA. It'll allow me to provide a strong voice for the constituents of Olds Didsbury Three Hills in the first legislative session. Let me close briefly with a little bit about the Wild Rose. Wild Rose is committed to balancing the provincial budget without raising your taxes or without raising the taxes on hardworking Albertans. Our plan is fully costed, and I have several copies here with me today. I encourage you to take one home and review it there or online. Our plan will end corporate welfare, cut wasteful spending, stop exorbitant severances, and shrink the size of the government's bloated bureaucracy. At the same time, our plan takes tangible steps to better support frontline workers, such as teachers, nurses, and support staff. We will work hard to fix rural healthcare and ambulance response times by empowering local decision-making and frontline workers. We will stand up for democratic reform and accountability, and perhaps most importantly, we will stand up for rural Alberta by protecting property rights, because we understand that long after the oil and gas is gone, our rural Alberta will be the engine of our economy. Today, as every day, I'm committed to earning your trust as we together stand up for Albertans.
Thank you, Nathan. Third on our list is from the PC party. No, I'm sorry. You were fourth. From the NDP party, that would be Glenn Norman. Sorry, Glenn.
Thank you, Myron, and thank you to the chamber. That's kind of a rough place to stand. I'm trying not to be a deer in the headlights here, but ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to say that I'm a third-generation Albertan, and my father, he was born just out of town here in Murray Valley. I farm just on the edge of this county, and I'm a cattle rancher and proud to be that. And you know, as Jim said, that cowboy. I guess I'm kind of that cowboy. I have both a technical school and a university education, and my values are your values, the values of rural Alberta. For the last 15 years, I have been an active and vocal advocate for landowner rights in the face of a PC industry-driven desire to remove those rights and the recourses under the law. For the last 10 years, I've been an active director of Alberta Surface Rights Group, the largest surface rights group in the province. I have gone one-on-one with cabinet ministers like Jack Hayden, Steve West, Diane McQueen, Mel Knight, and I'm not afraid to stand up to people and to stand up for rural Alberta. I have participated in many PC landowner consultations, so many that I've actually lost count. And you know what I've learned from them? They are nothing more than public consultation for a predetermined outcome. And you know, they're still not listening. I quote Wade here in the Olds Alberta, and it's the only concerns being relayed by the PCs, or the only concerns being relayed are the PC's concerns to voters, not the other way around. I'm sorry, that's not listening, folks. The last election, many landowners believed that the Wild Rose Party would fight for our rights. And what did we get? Well, that horse kind of left the post along with the floor crossers. The same people who put those floor crossers in as MLAs are now campaigning for the Wild Rose again. Can you, the voter, afford to trust them? You certainly cannot trust their judgment, nor can you trust their credibility. One righteous act to try and reverse a gross miscarriage of justice, a decision that robbed landowners of proper compensation when it came to companies going bankrupt and them being holding the bag with a lease. And Jim Prentice came and righteously and correctly said he would right that wrong. Well, that was only after several hundred landowners, farmers, got together and opened their wallets to create a court challenge to this. And you know how hard it is for us farmers to open our wallets. I mean, I've still got moths in there. And this certainly does not absolve the PC of their attempt to destroy all our rights. The Wild Rose and the PCs are just two lumps in the same pile. They are parties of big oil, big business, and big banks that lobby to destroy our rights in the first place. Proof of this is the fact that the leader of the Wild Rose, Brian Jean, actually contribute $10,000. 20 seconds. Okay. So why I've chosen to run for the NDP is that it's the party of fairness, and fairness is what's important to Albertans. Fairness in education, fairness in healthcare. You know, we're the only party that actually doesn't want to cut anything from healthcare. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Norman. And from the PC party, Wade Birchall.
Thank you very much. I thought we were going to get along a little better with the NDP than they did last night, but apparently not. First of all, it's awesome to see three political giants from the past here, Richard Mars and Bob Clark and Myron Thompson, three gentlemen that I really look up to. And I want to thank, first of all, everybody for showing up tonight, and my fellow constituents and my worthy opponents. It's a pretty cool way to spend a Friday night, maybe not for everybody, but hanging with fellow dedicated citizens, discussing and debating public policy, all to create a today that is good as it possibly can be and an even better tomorrow. I'm Wade Birchall, and I hope to become your PC MLA for Olds Didsbury Three Hills. My decision to run for MLA stems from a commitment to assure highly representative government. I will use my leadership skills to listen, learn, and advocate for my friends and neighbors in this constituency. This community has been my family's home for 12 years, and I continue to want to give back as a current two-term town councillor, a volunteer, and a passionate voice for our community. Our constituents deserve an MLA you believe in, one who works day in and day out to serve your best interests. I'll give you everything that I have, and I'll be your voice in Edmonton. I keep my promises, I stand up for what's right, and I work hard to understand all sides of an issue to ensure my decisions are informed and defendable. My parents taught me that there's no substitute for hard work, integrity, or honesty. These values have been successful for me in business and municipal politics and are my foundation to serve you provincially. I have my family's support, my wife Sandy and two teenage sons, Spencer and Adam. It's really for my boys that I started thinking about politics, to assure a sustainable future for our children and our children's children. Through the campaign, I've heard from you what is key: access to quality healthcare and education, a focus on agricultural and business opportunities and land rights. I'm learning more about these topics each day. I know that I'm not the expert. You're the experts, and I'm an experienced businessman, a community leader, but you're the farmers, tradespeople, teachers, nurses, and doctors, the providers and consumers of essential public services. I know how you expect your government to serve and support, and I will work to realize this for as long as I have the privilege and honor of serving my community. So here is my full commitment. I will fight for what you need and want and what you're entitled to. Our PC plan, I'm supposed to hold it up, but I forgot it over there, so just imagine. Our PC plan, the Prentice Plan, includes economic projections that have been vetted by economists, bankers, and leading financial experts. Our plan is about assuring a sustainable future for Albertan and Albertans that restricts resource price volatility on our public trust. I respect this plan because it creates a level of responsibility for the government to make cutbacks and access new revenue streams needed to protect our most important frontline services. Our plan is the right plan because it affects both today and tomorrow for the better. Our plan for immediate action will strengthen our fiscal foundation, save for the future, protect jobs, invest as we grow, including the largest school build in Canadian history, and support Alberta's families. Our long-term plan to secure Alberta's future will diversify our economy, including a stronger focus on value-added agriculture, expand our markets, protect property rights, partner with municipalities, transfer our relationship with Aboriginal people, and preserve Alberta's environment. The Prentice Plan will balance the budget by 2017, even if oil prices do not rebound. We will continue the lowest corporate taxes in Canada, which is why business prefers to operate here. And if we increase corporate taxes, we will lose businesses, and that means losing jobs. The Prentice Plan is as much about protecting Albertans' jobs as anything, and there is no greater driver in this economy than employment. There are spending cuts that happen in a balanced and measured approach that will not upset our economy or disrupt services. We will reduce the size of government. These are Albertans who work in the public service. They're fellow citizens. We will take 3 years to do what some might like to do in 3 months, because every single job in this province is worth holding on to. And while no one welcomes higher taxes or new service fees, we need new sources of revenue. Personal income taxes in Alberta have not increased since 1987, 28 years ago. You know, I've read the other plans and I'm troubled. If your economy could be protected and our future enhanced without any new taxes or service fees, we would have done it. But it can't be done, and that's why we're having an election, to trust Albertans, to trust you. When you choose Alberta's future on May 5th, please vote for me, Wade Baerschel. Thank you.
Well, thank you, candidates. That was very well done. Isn't it amazing that when you would give a talk up here, 5 minutes seems like about 2? The rest of it sounds like about 15. Very well done, and we will now open immediately to questions. We don't want to waste any time. We want to get as many questions out as we possibly can. Did somebody leave their glasses up here?
Wade dropped his.
Oh, Wade?
No, they're not mine, sorry.
Okay. This is in order? Okay, if you wish to ask a question orally, please move to the platform now. In the meantime, we're going to get right to the written questions. And we have a roving mic, so you candidates, you can stay where you are, and a mic will be delivered quickly, and you can answer from that spot. We won't waste time, get lots of questions in. First question is about fiscal responsibility. How will your party ensure that parents, their patients, come first in our healthcare system? And this is submitted by, am I supposed to tell who submitted these questions? Okay, that's the question. How will your party ensure that parents come first in our healthcare? So on the, or patients, on parents. Looks like parents to me. Oh well. We'll start in continued order. Pardon? Just go across for the first question with NDP.
Well, my party does have a plan, and that plan doesn't involve cutting $1 million or $1 billion or $2 billion from healthcare. The only way we're going to see that patients come first is to do something with all that empty healthcare space. 34 NHL hockey rinks sitting there, and yet we've got hallway medicine going on. If we focus on the patient, we can see that patients come first. And we're not doing that, and I see nothing that cutting away money from healthcare is going to solve. It's only going to make the crisis worse. I think the worst plan is to take and fire 5,000 managers.
Well, the Wild Girls clearly has a plan to have patient-focused healthcare. If we look at AHS, we see massive amounts of waste. For example, in the last 5 years, in severance payments alone, AHS has wasted $30 million on severance payments. If all we need to do is take the waste, upside down, overloaded bureaucracy and reallocate those funds to the front line, to our doctors and nurses who are doing such a great job taking care of our friends and family, this alone will have significant impact on increasing patient care.
Thank you. Next, Wade.
Thank you. This Premier and the party have addressed the issues of healthcare, and their significant issues. We obviously don't have a spending problem. We spend more per capita than any other province. And the plan, the Prentice Plan addresses that, moving to 8 to 10 operational boards. So to try to deal with it, and a balanced plan to, instead of just gutting our healthcare system, to balance the approach and look at cutbacks on a measured approach over a time of 3 years to allow, and cutting back through administrative, in some of the administrative positions, through retirement and attrition. And I think that's a balanced plan, and I think it's a smart way to go, rather than just start gutting our healthcare system, which in 1993 proved that that's really not the most effective way to do it, and I think a balanced measured approach is what is what this Premier's looking at, and I think that's what most Albertans want.
Joe?
Thanks. The patient experience in the emergency room is really, really crucial and important. They don't feel valued if they have to wait 6 hours to see a doctor. So that's the first thing we would try to change. We're lucky in this area in Olds and Disbury. I don't know the others, but you can see a doctor within 20 minutes. But it's not that way in the big centers like Calgary and Edmonton. That needs to change. People wait hours and hours, and the story about the person dying before he had a chance to see anybody, just sitting in a wheelchair waiting, and he was dead by the time they got around to it. The patient experience is what we're looking for here, what we want to change, which is really important.
Okay, now we go to the floor, and you have to speak really loud, because unfortunately, we don't have a mic there. Then I'll help you out if you need it.
I'll try. We've heard on the news about an awful lot of money being spent on the Masters golf course and going to the people who are running it, and we've also seen an awful lot of secrecy around that whole lease and that course. Will your party look at selling that course and opening up the books and showing us what has gone on there?
Okay, that wasn't directed to anyone, so we'll start with Nathan. Oh.
Well, thank you so much for the question. The golf course is a perfect example of the mismanagement of the current government. 100%, absolutely, the Wild Rose would sell the golf course. There is no reason for the government to be in the golf course business. And the secrecy and the lack of transparency around these kind of issues, the government only seems willing to do the right thing for the wrong reasons, and that's because they've been pressured by political parties or individuals from the community that highlight the most egregious forms of waste. And at a time when we're in an economic crunch, spending $12 million to repair a golf course is absolutely unbelievable.
Okay. Next question is directed to the PC party. Oh, I'm sorry. I kind of got ahead of myself. I really want to get to her.
The answer is yes. And this kind of secrecy that surrounded that is the kind of secrecy that has surrounded the PC government for a great many years. The NDP will provide open and transparent governance. And governance for working families and the middle class. And that's the only way you can supply that is to have the books open and allow everyone to see.
Thank you. Throughout the course of the early nominations, the Premier talked about and addressed the golf course issue, and they stopped putting money into the redevelopment of that. Do I think the government needs to be in golf course business? No, I don't. But there's issues going on that are bigger than just simple yes and no answers. But the Premier stopped spending money on that project, and that's the long and short of it.
I don't really have much to say, except that it's probably can only be open for 3 months anyway. What's the point of putting your course there in the first place?
The next written question is directed to the PC party, or Bruce. How and where are you going to cut government expenses by $8.6 billion?
Well, the good thing about the PC party is it's laid out a plan. I can't say that for every other party. And we have looked through $8.6 in reduced spending, or excuse me, $8.6 billion in reduced spending over a course of 3 years in a balanced and measured approach. And the Prentice Plan is available. It's available online. I can give you a copy. It's there for everybody to see. It's, I think, the most balanced and measured approach, and we can't repeat that enough, because these cutbacks, rather than gutting public center and frontline services, are going to deal with that over the course of 3 years at today's oil prices. So we're not budgeting on $100 oil. We're going to balance the budget in 3 years based on current fiscal reality.
Ta-da! I appreciate Wade's comments. I will say, you know, I love a good fearmonger every now and then. They aren't the only one that have a plan. In fact, our plan has been fully costed. It's been reviewed by an economist friend of theirs in the form of Dr. Jack Mintz, a respected economist from the U of C. And I think, in fact, in the Prentice Plan, you'll see that it's not on today's oil price, it's on a $75 oil barrel, but that's neither here nor there. The challenge is that the current government refuses to stop wasteful spending, like billions of dollars on corporate welfare. This year alone, we're going to spend $300 million on carbon capture and storage, a science that many, many other provinces are moving away from, and this government is refusing to make the hard choices, and this isn't even a hard one, but when it comes to reining in spending, they refuse to do that.
Well, our party has a plan, and it's a plan that's based on reality. First of all, the idea that we simply have a spending problem is ridiculous. What we have is a revenue problem. We need to re-examine what our royalty rates, and we propose a commission to do that, to examine them, because they are the lowest in the world. And is that really acceptable? Is that really how we should operate as owners of the resource? We also have a plan to increase the revenue by actually raising the corporate tax to about the same level as the jurisdictions on either side of us. That's not unreasonable. The corporations are going to run away. Well, they'll threaten to, and they'll whine and they'll complain, but when it comes right down to it, they'll pay the tax. What's more is we need to change the way we're collecting that tax. Currently, there's almost $1 billion in uncollected corporate tax, and it's because of the way we've chose to do it. As far as corporate welfare, you know my feelings on that.
Very short comment. I'd appreciate it if we prohibit public spending announcements during an election. I find that confusing, and the rest of the parties, how do you compete with that? Anyway.
Next, from the nobody at the floor, Heritage Trust Fund. How come we can't use the Heritage Trust Fund today? When the oil prices get back up to $70 a barrel, then we can start replenishing the trust fund. When Premier Lougheed set up the fund, it was for a rainy day. Is this not a rainy day? The question is addressed to all candidates.
For us, the Heritage Trust Fund was set up by PCs, by Premier Lougheed, when they were cowboys. And that was a good move, and the subsequent leaders spent it. How much is there left? I don't know. There's various stories, but it's different in Norway. It was set up at the same time. They're living off the interest, as I understand.
I think this is the best province in the country, and probably one of the best areas to live in this world. So, you know, when I listen to other places being better than we are, I have a pretty hard time with that. When it comes to the Heritage Trust Fund, the Prentice Plan talks about having it doubled by 2025, and working as soon as we're out of, and we see an increase in oil revenues, that we start rebuilding the Heritage Trust Fund. And I think it's the right way to go about it. I think we're using contingency funds right now, so to help keep a balanced approach as we work to balancing the budget.
It's a good thing I juggled in high school, mercy. We had the sustainability fund as well, and there was $17 billion in that sustainability fund, which has changed the name to contingency fund, and unfortunately, it was spent during the current government at a time when it wasn't even raining. And you're bang on. Today, it is raining. But the challenge is that we need to be utilizing the Heritage Trust Fund for our future and not for today. And as a province, if we had just invested the interest from the original savings, we would have over $220 billion left in that fund. Now, the Wild Rose Plan will legislate 50% of all future surpluses to go into the fund. And the interest must be left alone in the fund so it can replace the resource revenue when the resources have been depleted.
It's interesting you brought up Norway. Do you know where Norway got the idea? It was from Peter Lougheed. Peter Lougheed believed, like the NDP does now, is that we need to treat these resources like we are the owners. Collecting nothing, or virtually nothing, for royalties is certainly not the way an owner should act. We should be looking at controlling the growth and development of the fields and focusing more on upgrading, refining, and processing. And those are certainly ways that we can make the Heritage Trust Fund going. And I would say it's only sprinkling, it's not raining yet. Let the PCs get power another couple of terms, and it'll be a deluge.
Next question. I was a marriage counselor or commissioner for 11 years. Last year, September, my license was revoked because I refused to marry same-sex couples. My religious convictions do not permit me to do so. Minorities took away my rights, my privilege to say no. What are your opinions on this or other moral issues?
Thank you. I'll respect the laws of this province as they are laid out, and until my constituents tell me that we should not be doing it. So that's my simple answer to that.
You know, if it looks like a duck, acts like a duck, it's a duck. A bigot is a bigot. That's all.
Well, I've kind of got a rural attitude about this is, you know, live and let live. What's for some people ain't for others. And if it's the law and you're supposed to marry them because you're a commissioner and it's against your religion, well, too bad, so sad, follow the law.
You know, the Wild Rose doesn't plan on changing legislation around any of these issues. These issues are federally regulated, and they will continue to be so. The law of the land has been set, and I don't see that changing anytime in the future.
Thank you. Will your party take action to reduce MLA pay and perks? If so, how? This is directed to Nathan Cooper.
So absolutely, our party has been very clear over a long period of time about reducing MLA perks and pay. You know, our personal favorite is an MLA is able to claim up to 80,000 kilometers a year, and they get paid 43 cents a kilometer to do that. On top of that 43 cents a kilometer, they also have a gas card, and all of their gas is covered. And the real kicker on this one is that there is absolutely zero accountability. They don't have to submit a receipt, they don't have to submit proof of driving, anything like this. So the Wild Rose is committed to reducing a number of MLA perks and pay, this one being one of them for sure, and at the very least, requiring some form of accountability and transparency when it comes to these sort of outrageous perks that MLAs have been accustomed to because of a 44-year reign.
I'm all for quitting some of the perks. I'm not so sure how much we should cut the pay of the MLA. You know, if you're going to attract people that are capable of doing the job, you're going to have to compete with other industries. They can't all be like me or just here because I'm friggin' dedicated. I do this job for damn near nothing. But I mean, when it comes right down to it, I may well have to pay somebody to take over my farm, because I ain't giving that up either. But so as far as the perks go, I mean, there's some pretty ridiculous ones that 44 years of the same government have got, and I certainly believe that there's a lot of things that need to be reviewed and a lot of things that need to be revoked.
I agree. I think that the party is doing it. The premier's had a year under his belt. We need to tighten things up, and I think it's what our constituents in Olds, Didsbury, Three Hills expect. And if I'm your MLA, when I'm your MLA, I will be up there making sure that compensation is fair. To throw out numbers isn't fair. Fair is there is going to be expenses if you're driving around this crisscrossing this constituency in the time I've been running is 5,000-6,000 kilometers. So just throwing out numbers I don't quite understand, but I will insist on behalf of the constituents that compensation be fair, and if it's not right, then I'll be the first one to speak up about that.
Yeah, not much to say, but I understand there's lots of perks that we have no idea about. And it'd be an interesting study, because I believe a lot of things are hidden in terms of things like that. But personally, I don't have complete knowledge of what the perks are.
With the downturn of the Alberta economy, is there any fight to equalization payments? To anybody?
Maybe we'll start getting some finally.
Thanks, Wade. One thing that I can assure us all of is that we won't be getting any, because it's based on our financial capacity, not solely on our revenues. So unfortunately, even though our revenues are significantly down, currently, we're still going to be making some very significant transfer payments to Ottawa. One thing that we do need to fix is the equalization formula so that it's fair to Alberta. We shouldn't be subsidizing the social programs of other provinces that are often better than ours. Alberta can only be a leader in Canada when it comes to getting our own house in order, and we need to ensure that we have our own house in order so that we can make an even stronger case to Ottawa when we can apply pressure with working to change the equalization formula.
Fiscal responsibility to Nathan. How will your party ensure that patients come first in our healthcare system?
Well, I think it's fairly similar to the last question, and I'll expand a little bit from the last time. Turning the pyramid back upside down so we have our frontline workers in the fore is obviously key, but then additionally, ensuring that we have real local decision making. The current premier has gone back and forth, and he says now that we're going to have 8 advisory councils, but Kaminsky, who is the head of AHS, has said that those advisory councils are only going to be able to have decision-making powers, if you will, in a very, very, very small range. So I hope that they can be meaningful, but if history has taught us very much, it's highly unlikely that they will be a meaningful board. And Wild Rose would ensure that we have strong, meaningful local decision-making that could take place so that patient care could be increased.
The trouble, I think, with the other parties' plans on healthcare is every time we go through this cycle, it's the same thing. Let's reorganize healthcare. Trouble is now that we have a top-driven down system, and the Wild Rose plan to kick out 5,000 pins in it isn't going to do much of anything except make things worse. The real thing that we need to do now is stabilize funding to healthcare. Deal with the problems by consulting with frontline workers, consulting with our communities, consulting with medical professionals. You don't get anywhere without listening to the people who are out there in the ground in the trenches.
We do have a plan, guaranteed stable funding that matches population growth and inflation. Invest in long-term care beds, invest in preventative care, invest in home care to let seniors age gracefully at home with support if necessary.
The Prentice plan is, again, to establish 8 to 10 operational districts with local advisory councils to expand local decision-making and direction over how healthcare is delivered. And I think that's a good plan. I think it's the smart thing to do. The Premier has freely admitted that there were some problems with the super boards, and they're moving down into more of a regional system and allow more decision-making at the local level.
Yes, from the floor, nice and loud, please.
I've heard talk about accountability here. I've heard talk about fiscal responsibility here from each of the candidates, and good work on that, fellow. I want to hear about moral responsibility. I got into politics this year because I got pissed off. I haven't been involved in politics since the Grant by me scandal. We've got a premier who bought memberships to get his votes into his leadership. He's appointed non-elected members as MLAs. And we've had floor crossing. What have you people got in place to combat this? What have you people got in place to make sure that when I vote one of you in, you're the person, you're the party I've got?
My party will not accept floor crossers, period. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We won't accept it. If I was to disagree with my party and was to decide I couldn't follow their position, I couldn't stay in their caucus, I would never, ever dream of joining another party. I would simply sit as an independent. That is the moral thing to do, and that's what I would expect of any MLA. And I don't need to sign a $100,000 contract to say it's going to be, because that is what is right.
Hey, thanks so much for the question. One of the things that I've talked to a lot of folks about, because I too was disappointed in December with that, at a time when we need to be engaging more people, it certainly didn't have that effect. And so I've committed, should I be elected, to work to introduce a private members bill that would require any member of the Assembly that would like to change political affiliations for any reason to sit as an independent or to resign and run in a by-election. I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's unfortunate that we're at a time where we have to legislate the right thing, but I think that a deterrent, as we've seen in other constituencies or in other provinces like Manitoba, where they do have this type of legislation, I think it's critically important, and I think it speaks to my commitment to stay with the party that brung me, or to, should I ever need to, sit as an independent or run in a by-election.
I'm going to talk a little bit about your question about morals. As it refers to the Premier, when I listen to the Premier, the reason I chose to run is because when I listened to the Premier in September at AUMA, which is our local government conference, I believed in this person, and I thought he was a breath of fresh air, because I'll tell you what, I was pretty ticked off too. And that's why I chose to run, because I believe him. Yes, there's been a couple of blips in over the course of the 5 or 6 months, but I believe that he's done everything he can. The PC party needs Jim Prentice more than Jim Prentice needed the PC party, and I want to believe that he's there to make changes, and we have to I'm putting my trust in it, because if elected, my biggest disappointment is not getting elected. My biggest disappointment would be to go down there and find business as usual, and I want to believe that Jim Prentice wants to make changes, and I think he's done a good job over the course of the last 12 months trying to manage everything and provide a plan.
Thanks for the question. My experience was betrayal when that happened. I didn't understand democracy anymore, and I was angry. And so my attitude is sort of, you know, that saying, I hope I say it right, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. And that's where I'm coming from.
Next question. How are we doing for time? How can you help eliminate long waiting lists for surgery?
More hospitals, more doctors. Don't see it the other way.
Our plan is specific in implementing a wait time reduction plan, which includes an emergency room expansion, investing in additional surgical capacity, expanding after-hours care access through primary care networks, freeing up acute care beds, and expanding the number of continuing care and restorative care spaces for seniors and others with complex mental needs. We need to make full use of our trained healthcare professionals by allowing paramedics and nurses and optometrists to do more to try to limit, to fix some of the problems that we have with wait times.
Well, as many of you know, that the Wild Rose recently announced a wait time guarantee. It's a policy that would allow individuals to receive the same payment that they would receive in Alberta in another jurisdiction if they had to wait longer than the wait time guarantee. It's a policy that Mr. Prentice himself campaigned on and endorsed a much larger version in the 2006 election when he was a federal MP. And unlike the current government, we don't think that Albertans should be waiting for a year to get a knee or a hip replacement. And we don't think that cancer patients should be forced around waiting, wondering if they're getting more sick. And there will be those who fearmonger and say this is two-tier healthcare. We are providing people with the opportunity, the same revenue that we would have spent here in Alberta. Should they choose to go to another jurisdiction, they would receive that same payment.
Well, neither of the parties to my right really have a serious plan. The only way you even stand a chance of getting to the situation when you can fix waiting times is to have stable funding. Cutting $1 billion or $2 billion isn't going to do that. It's only going to make the situation worse. By focusing on the patient, by making use of the empty space that's in hospitals, like the empty wing in Didsbury, we can certainly find places where we can hold more patients for surgery and reduce wait times.
From the floor, Lyson Lau, please.
Thanks, Marvin. Duncan Milne, Mountain County. We are at present facing an infrastructure deficit of $64 million over the next 20 years in bridge funding alone. We have 250 bridges in the county that are nearing the end of their lifespan. Over the last 3 years, the provincial government has zero funded bridge building in the province. We've been told to use MSI money, so we're already using that to try and build roads for the county. What are your plans to help address the infrastructure deficit for all municipalities?
Hey, thanks, Duncan. Appreciate the question. The Wild Rose has consistently been talking about the same plan. It's the same plan from the 2012 election. It was a plan that has received very favorable reviews from a number of municipal politicians, including the Mayor of Calgary, and it is called our 1010 Municipal Funding Plan. It is a plan that would see stable, consistent municipal funding. Not that similar to MSI, we would take all the politics out of it. Recently, we saw a $400 million announcement of new MSI money 3 weeks before the budget, and then a cut in the budget of approximately $400 million of MSI money. So the 1010 plan is tied to revenue and will remain consistent, and municipalities will be able to plan on it.
The NDP is committed to stable and reliable funding for the municipalities. What's more, I personally believe that municipalities need to have a little more autonomy. They don't need to come begging for money, and they certainly, when it comes to energy development, which the way and scope that's happening now has put great strain on the infrastructure of counties, particularly in the west end of Mountain View here, that they need to have some kind of serious say as to the rate and intensity of development. That'll certainly prevent this from happening again.
Thank you. The PC party's laid out a 5-year plan, $29.5 billion in infrastructure spending over 5 years. And I'm very wary, as somebody who runs a medium-sized business, over how you can promise, certain parties can promise tax cuts as well as committing to infrastructure spending. So in our plan, again, $29.5 billion at a measured approach over 5 years, committed to building not just bridges and roads, but schools and healthcare as well. So that's our plan, and it's out there for everybody to see.
For the Alberta Party, the infrastructure deficit is the elephant in the room. We have no idea what the deficit is. We're dealing with orphan wells, hundreds of orphan wells, pipelines that are paper thin and leaking all over the province, some right in our cities and towns. The infrastructure of the oil industry is going to have to be repaired. We have no idea how much it's going to cost because nobody wants to talk about it. We have an interest in finding out the reality of that situation because it affects everybody, and who's going to get the bill? Albertans, guaranteed.
Well, thank you all for the written questions, and now we move to the final question, and that's the young lady at the podium. Please speak nice and loud.
Thank you. This question is about education.
We want to guarantee per student funding match population growth and inflation. Phase out, definitely phase out school fees. Reduce taxpayer subsidies to private schools. We want to guarantee that our kids, like us, got a better education than our parents. The cost effectiveness, well, that depends on political will. How important is it for Albertans? I think it's important, but it is going to cost.
Thank you. My party feels like everyone in this room that education is important, and we want to preserve frontline teaching positions, invest in training for teachers, especially adequate math training, improve teaching standards in partnership with teachers to meet needs of today's students, and provide additional support and mentorship for new teachers. And we are in difficult fiscal times, and the key message is to have the balanced and measured approach while we get back on our feet in this province. And education is a priority. They've asked school boards to let them use their reserves while we help deal with this so that we don't have to have any impact on frontline services. And if there is issues that need to be addressed, because things certainly change, the Premier has said that they will adjust to certain difficulties in the educational system.
Thank you. You know, education is the one thing that if we get right, everything else gets a little bit easier. And if we get wrong, everything else gets just a little bit harder. And the overall education budget is less than 15% of our total budget. And targeting education is certainly not within the plan of the Wild Rose. We will effort to ensure that the appropriate resources are dedicated to the classroom. We've seen in education so much money spent in curriculum redevelopment and all sorts of new ideas. We believe that we need to be focusing on the core values of education, reading, writing, and arithmetic, and allowing our teachers to do what they do best, and that's teach and fund the classroom in order to do that.
You know, said that children are our future. The only way we're going to have a future is to fund education. The New Democrats are committed to put new funding in place for each student that's coming into it. I've consulted with teachers directly, as have many New Democrat candidates. We see what the problems are, and we know what needs to be fixed. There was, and you know, when you had a consultation, there was one party who was conspicuously absent, and that was the PCs. The only way we're going to fix education and make things better is to listen what the teachers, the administrators, and the trustees have to say. You know, trustees are elected officials. We should be paying a lot more attention to them, and they should have a lot more say of what's going on.
Thank you. Now, that concludes the question period, except I'm going to break a rule. I've been having such a perfect evening, it wouldn't be right for Myron Thompson to come out perfect. So one more question, and you have the floor, nice and loud.
I would like to thank the candidates for putting their names forward to run in the democratic process. We are blessed to have this. People in other countries die for that. They can get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to stand in line and to be shot at. Everybody needs to get out and vote. That's not a problem in this room, but I encourage everybody to find 1 or 2 people to go and vote too. Thank you very much for putting your names forward.
I didn't make a mistake at all because he gave my final comments for me. And I certainly agree with those comments, and thank you very much for stating that loud and clear. It's been a pretty darn good evening. Now we're going to wrap it up with each candidate having 2 minutes, maximum of 2 minutes. You can quit earlier if you like, for rebuttal on any topic or anything that happened in your final remarks. starting with a draw. We got a draw again, and Jim, you came up first.
Actually, I think I did, didn't I? I think it was me.
Did you give me the wrong sheet?
Okay, I'm second. So
Well, I'm pretty sure it was me. I'll go first. Yeah, I know.
It's you.
Yeah, that was the first time I was number one for anything. Thanks. I don't want to lose the glasses here. Okay. I want to, first of all, thank Myron as our moderator and the Olds District and Chamber of Commerce for organizing. To each of my competitors for sharing their vision for Alberta's future, and to you for caring enough to participate in this process. When this election was called, I thought it was about the financial plans that every party put forth to secure Alberta's future. I still think this is true, but I believe Albertans have decided the key campaign issue is actually trust in the plans and those that will carry them out. I trust the Prentice Plan. I believe it clearly determines what we need to do to weather our current economic challenge and restore us to a level of prosperity that is eternally sustainable. It's a plan that relies on Albertans as its primary revenue source and saves the spoils of resource booms to create value and opportunity for Albertans when our general budget is too crunched to do so. I trust that idea because it makes sense to me. I hope that my experience as a business person, volunteer, and a municipal councillor earns your trust. I have spent my life living up to and by the principles that my parents ingrained in me of hard work, honesty, and integrity, doing what you say you'll do, and doing it well. I hope you put your trust in me because I will commit myself to you, to be your voice in provincial decisions and to assure that you are heard. And I hope this because I trust you, the voters, you, my friends and neighbors in Olds, Didsbury, Three Hills, are never wrong. The voters' final decision is right, and I will support it. So on Tuesday, May 5th, I hope you've earned your trust. I hope I've earned your trust, and I'm your vote. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. I want to thank my fellow candidates and Mr. Thompson and the sponsors, and I even see some young people in the back of the room. It's so great to have you and everybody else as well. As the local Wild Rose candidate, I have dedicated myself to providing you with a principled, optimistic, and truly conservative alternative worthy of your vote. Ultimately, the choice will be yours. Let me leave you with this thought. Has the government done a good job of managing our money? If not, why should we give the government more money to mismanage? We can choose increased government spending, increased taxes, we can grow the size of government, or we can choose a smaller government, a more efficient government focused on getting results for Albertans. We can continue under an administration that routinely imposes government knows best policies, or we can elect a government that trusts you to make the right decisions for you, your family, and your community. We can accept the status quo with all the government waste and entitlement that comes along with it, or we can turn the page and move forward. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time that we put principles ahead of politics. It's time for a change. It's time for us to stand together, to stand up for Alberta. My name is Nathan Cooper, and I am asking for your vote.
On the coat of arms for Canada, there's a statement, it's in Latin, one I've heard for years, and it means from sea to sea. Admare usque admare. I thought that was the only one. But there's another one on that same coat of arms. Desiderantis Meliorum Patriam. They desire a better country, from sea to sea. There's two of them there. On Alberta's coat of arms, we've got two words, fortress and liber, strong and free. These statements are meant to identify the spirit of a country and a province. The first two are on Canada's coat of arms, like I said, and then Alberta's coat of arms. Whether we are aware of it or not, these symbols have a power that the provinces, the pioneers of this province, valued, and my Alberta values. We think our party belongs to all Albertans, the Alberta Party. We don't have ties in the East. We don't have ties with any others. We're friends. We're colleagues in a confederation and a federation, but this party belongs to us. And when my grandchildren and great-grandchildren ask about me, I want them to know that I stood up today when I looked in the mirror like our premier told me to. This is what I want them to know, that I'm standing up today. Thank you.
You know, I had a prepared statement, but I think I'm going to deviate from it. What this is really about, this is about a choice of vision for Alberta. Do you believe, one, that we have a spending problem, or do you believe that we have a revenue problem? If you believe that we have a spending problem, well, there's your two parties. The same party that gave us the problem in the first place. Couldn't put any money aside when we had extraordinary oil prices. We have a vision that says we should cut government and the size of government. Well, cutting the size of government has a consequence, and that is the cutting of service. That is literally impossible. And I mean, everybody can talk about it, but if you start pulling money from education, you start pulling money from healthcare, there is consequence, and that consequence will be a loss of service. And it doesn't really matter. You really have to make that choice, and that's the really hard choice for you as a voter. That you better think about this, and you better think about it carefully. Do you have this vision of Alberta for the corporations, for the wealthy, or do you have a vision of Alberta for working families and the middle class? Man, it's tough to be in your side of the table. It really is. And I can tell you one thing, and one thing only, is that you need to get out there and vote. And you need to tell others to get out there and vote. Because democracy only works if you participate in it. And thank you very much for listening to me and my fellow candidates. Good night.
Well, once again, to each of the candidates, thank you for taking a position. Thank you for running for your citizens of your country. And thank you for participating tonight. I have to say, I've been to a few hundred or thousand campaigns, gatherings, and I believe that that's about the first one that I ever saw where the speakers did not interrupt and pester each other. And I thought that was good. One thing you can relate to your leaders after watching last night's debate on TV. They should watch this on TV locally to learn how to debate without interruption. This crowd, you're a wonderful bunch. I can't ever remember being to a crowd when there wasn't name calling or cat calling or something ridiculous going on. But you guys were good. And I congratulate you for that. If I missed something, that's too bad, because I'd have nailed you. And secondly, I'm going to allow the candidates to get up and move towards their tables at the back, and I encourage all of you people to get back and have some more visit with them. We're open till 9, if I'm right. 9 o'clock before you have to leave, so I'm sure they'll answer more questions that you may have. God bless each and every one of you. Safe travels wherever you go, and thank you so much for coming tonight.
Countdown to Alberta Election 2015 for the Olds Didsbury Three Hills riding. The Candidates Forum for Olds is on Friday, April 24th at 7 p.m. at the Pomeroy Inns and Suites. Doors are open at 6:30. Sponsored by the Olds and District Chamber of Commerce, Mountain View Publishing, CKFM and Rock 104 Radio, and the Pomeroy Inns and Suites at Olds College. Olds Community TV will be broadcasting live on channel 148 on the O-NET IPTV network.